Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to crochet this little pig. For your materials that you're going to need today, you're going to want some pink yarn, you're going to want a small section of black yarn, and you're going to want some stuffing, and a couple safety eyes. You'll definitely want those, or you can just sew on some eyes on there if you want to. You're going to want your crochet hook. I'm using a 5.5 millimeter. And you're going to want a sewing needle to be able to sew in your ends when you get everything done, and some scissors. So to get started, I'm going to go in with my crochet hook. I'm going to go in with pink. Start with the pink yarn. And we're going to do a slip knot, and we're going to be working in the big circle here. So make sure you make a big loop. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to chain one in the big loop. And then we're going to turn our work. And then we're going to put 8 single crochets in this big loop. Sorry, that is my dog whining. She doesn't like being cooped up in a room. So once you have your 8 on there, let me make sure I actually have 8. Yep, 8 of them. We're going to close up the circle so that it's tight like that. And then we are going to slip stitch in the first single crochet we did. There you go. And the next row we're going to do, we're going to chain 1. And in every single crochet all the way around, you're going to put 2 single crochets. Okay, so when you're done, you should have a total of 16. I wanted to count to make sure I didn't do more than what I was supposed to. You're going to slip stitch into the end. And for the third row, you're going to chain 1. And in the first crochet here, you're going to do 1 single crochet. And then in the second one, you're going to do 2 single crochets. And you're going to repeat that all the way around. So 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets. Okay, and then at the end we're gonna do a slip stitch. And for our fourth row, got too many 4s in there. For our fourth row, I'm gonna chain 1, and we're gonna do 1 single crochet in the first 2 stitches here. So we're gonna put 1 in the first one and 1 in the second one. And in our third single crochet here, we're going to do 2 single crochets. And then you're going to repeat that all the way around. So in the first two here, do 1 single crochet each. And then the next one you're going to do 2. Okay, and then we're going to slip stitch into the first single crochet. That ends that row. And for the next 8 rows, you're going to chain 1, and then you're going to do 1 single crochet in each stitch all the way around for the next 8 rows. Okay, now that you have those 8 rows done, we're going to add on the eyes. So I've got my safety eyes here. I'm going to go from the top to the bottom, so I'm going to go down 8 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're going to put them in this row. And I'm just going to kind of find the middle of where I kind of want to put it. So I'm going to move over just a little bit, and I'm going to put them 6 stitches apart. So I'm just going to count out 6 here, 2, 4, 6. So let's put that one there. And you're going to want to stick these inside the stitch, because if you don't, then they're just going to slip through. Get it here. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to flip it inside out, and then I'm going to put my backs on. Some of the safety eyes, some of the backs are hard to put on. These right here that I have, they're not too bad. The backs are kind of, they're shaped a little bit better to where they go on better, but they're really hard to get back off. Here we go. Okay, so now that we have our eyes on, we can continue with the next row. So I'm going to stick my needle back in, my hook back in there. So the next one we're going to do is we're going to start decreasing. So I'm going to chain 1, and let's see, in the first 2 single crochets, the stitches here, we're going to put 1 single crochet each. And then we're going to decrease. Now to decrease, you're going to stick your crochet hook into the next stitch, bring up a loop like you were going to make a single crochet, but before you bring the yarn through, you're going to go through the next stitch and do the exact same thing. So you should have a total of 3 loops on your hook. Now you can pull your yarn through, and you just did a decrease. So we're going to repeat that again. We're going to do 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to decrease again. So stick your crochet hook in, get a loop up, in the first stitch there. Next stitch, you're going to do the exact same thing. Have 3 loops on your hook and then pull your yarn through, and you just decreased. And you're going to do that all the way around to the end. So you're going to do 2 single crochets in the next 2 stitches and then decrease. Okay, then we're going to slip stitch into the first single crochet there. And for this next one, we're going to chain 1 and then we're going to single crochet all the way around in each stitch. Okay, so now we will slip stitch into the first one here. Okay, for the next row, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to single crochet in the first stitch, and then we're going to decrease in the next 2 stitches. Okay, and then we're going to repeat that all the way around. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then decrease in the next 2 stitches. Okay, and we're going to slip stitch into the end here. And the next row, we are going to chain 1 and we're going to do a single crochet all the way around to the end in each stitch. Okay, and we'll slip stitch in the end here. Okay, and before we close it up, we're gonna stuff the body. So grab some of your stuffing and we'll start stuffing. You can put as much stuffing in it as you'd like. I want mine just a little bit squishy, so I'm going to put it about like that. So it looks a little squishy, but hey, that's all right. It looks really cool. I like the way it fits. So you can put as much in there as you want. So now we're going to close up the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a chain 1, and we're going to decrease all the way around. So we'll decrease in the first 2 stitches. And all the way around, you're going to decrease. Okay, and we will slip stitch into the very first one there. And now we can fasten off. So leave a pretty big end because we're going to sew up the rest of the hole here. I'm going to pull it through to make a knot. Pull it through my loop here to make a knot. And now we're going to close it up. So this is when you're going to need your needle. I'm going to put my yarn through the needle. Now I'm going to sew it up. So how I like to sew it up is I'm going to be working in the back loops of the crochets that we did. So I'm going to be working in the back loops. And I'm just going to pull my yarn through all the way around. So in the back loops of those crochets we just did. And at the end, when I get this all done here, pulling it through, oops, I'm about to lose my yarn. We're going to pull on the end and it's going to tighten it up. And it'll tighten up this little end here. This little hole, so it won't be as big. We'll pull it through there. Okay. And then just tighten it up. There you go. And I'm going to make a knot. And I'm going to put my yarn back on my needle. And this is so easy because then you don't have to thread the yarn through all those stitches or anything. You just poke it through. Poke it through the body, pull it through. And then cut off your end. Okay, so now that we have the body done, we can go on to the parts of the body. So now we're going to work on the nose and feet. The nose and feet are the same thing, so you're going to need 5 of these because you're going to want 4 feet and a nose. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make a slip knot, and we're going to be working in the loop again. We're going to be working in this big loop. So I'm going to insert my hook, and I'm going to chain 1 in my loop here. I'm going to turn my work like I always do. And I'm going to put 8 single crochets in the loop, just like we did to make the body. Okay, tighten up our loop here. And we're going to slip stitch in the first single crochet we did. Now I'm going to chain 1. Now I'm going to be working in the back loops of the single crochets we just did. And you're going to do 1 single crochet in each stitch that we just did. And I'm going to be working in the back loop of it. So it should look like that. So you're only going to be doing part of the crochet stitch that you just did. Okay, so you should have a total of 8. Okay, so I got my 8, so I can slip stitch into the first single crochet. And we can fasten off. And we just made the nose. So you're going to want a pretty big end because you're going to be sewing it on. And I'm just going to pull it through my loop here to make a knot. Okay, so now we're going to be working with the black yarn that I showed you that you're going to need. And we're going to be making the nose. So we're going to be making these lines that are on the nose. So they're pretty simple and easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this big strand of yarn that I cut off into 2 pieces. And I'm going to start with my first piece here. And I'm just going to kind of figure out what I want the nose, if I want. It doesn't matter which end you use. I usually like the end of like where we seamed it up at the end of our rows. I usually like that pointing down. So that way you can kind of figure out where you're going to put the black yarn. So I'm going to stick my needle in between a stitch, so about there, so that the line will be going along the loops here of the single crochets we did. So I'm just going to pull that through, and I'm going to take the other end of my black yarn and I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to pull it towards the bottom. So just like that. So you have that. So now I'm going to turn it over like this. I'm going to flip it inside out, and I'm going to just tie these 2 ends together. If I can keep them from my pink ends. We'll do a double knot. But don't tie it too tight, because it's going to take that yarn, it's going to tighten up that yarn too much in the front, so you won't be able to see much of it if you tie it too tight. And just do the exact same thing on the other side. Flip it inside out, and I'll tie these 2 ends. Okay, so now we have the nose done, we can attach it. So all of these ends that are on the inside, you can just stuff into the nose. We'll see how this works out, because I have a lot of black, so I think I'm going to cut some of the black off. So now you can just stuff it in there. I'm going to stuff the pink one in first. That way the black doesn't show as much in your little creases in between each single crochet that we did. And then you can stuff those in there. Okay, there we go. So there's your nose, and now we can attach it. So kind of just find like the middle of the in-between of the eyes, and make sure that your nostrils are straight on the face. Sometimes I can never get it straight, so sometimes it takes me a couple tries just to sew it on. So I'm going to try to go in as much as I can. I'm going to insert my end into my needle here, and then I'm going to start sewing it on. So I'm going to just kind of hold it. Let me just kind of see where my nose is at, and I'm going to just start sewing it on. Hopefully at the end it'll be somewhat straight. I hope so anyways. As you're going too, you can always check to see if it's straight on there too. And at the end here, we'll just make a knot. And we'll just stick our yarn through the body. And we'll just cut it off. There you go. You have the nose now. Okay, now we're going to attach the legs on the bottom of our pig. So I'm going to flip them over. And I've got my 4 legs here. And I have a long end to sew it on around the edge. And I also have a smaller end that's on the inside, so I just stuff that in. I like to use just a little bit of stuffing in the legs just to make them a little thicker and a little sturdier, so they're not just flattening out on you. So I like to make a little ball, depending on how big your feet are. That's a little too big. So let's tear some of that off. And we'll stuff that inside. Now I think the hardest part about sewing them on is trying to figure out like where you want to put the legs. So I don't want to put them too far on towards the front. I kind of want them towards the middle a little bit, so I kind of flatten them out so I can figure out where I want his legs and everything. And I'm going to put the end towards the middle, so it's kind of like, yeah, towards the hole here. So for this, just sewing them on, you kind of just have to figure it out yourself of where you kind of want the legs. So I'm going to sew on one. We'll start with our first one here in the front. You don't want it too close to the nose, because if you kind of flatten them out here, you can kind of see like you don't want them too close. So yeah, that looks pretty good down here. Move you over, and then I can start sewing them on. The only thing about sewing these on is that the stuffing might come out a little bit. So you might have to just hold them on there as you're going around and sewing. Okay, and then at the end here, we'll sew the last part, and we'll do a knot. And we'll just feed the end through, and we'll cut off our end, and then just go ahead and put on the rest. So now that we have our legs attached to the body, we can continue with the next step. We're gonna make the ears and the tail. So grab your yarn and your crochet hook again. I'm gonna make a slip knot. We're gonna be working in the loop again. So insert your crochet hook into the loop. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to chain one, of course. Turn our work. And then I'm gonna do 2 single crochets. And we're gonna do 1 double crochet. And we're gonna do 2 more single crochets. And then tighten it up. And now you can cut your end and pull your yarn through. And there you go. There's one of the ears. So we'll make another one of those. Make our slip knot here. We're going to chain 1 in the loop. And we're going to turn our work and do 2 single crochets. And then do a double crochet. And then do 2 more single crochets. And then we'll tighten it up here. Cut our end. Pull it through to make a knot. And there's your other ear. So now we're going to go and we're going to make the tail. The tail is really, really simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a slip knot again. And we're going to insert our hook. Chain 1. And then just do 2 single crochets. And then tighten it up. Oops, don't want to lose that. Cut our end. Make a knot so it doesn't unravel. And then just tighten it up. So it's a little tail. It's pretty simple. So now you can attach them. So grab your needle again and grab the pig. We're going to do the ears first. So I'm going to just plop them up like that. Grab my ears. And with the right side facing forward, we're going to attach them. So you just kind of have to figure out where you want to place them, just like the feet. So I'm just going to put this one, just kind of figure it out yourself. You can flatten it out and just look at it and figure out, oh, where do I want the ear? I'm going to put the ear about right there. So I'm just going to insert my yarn through here, one of the tails. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie these 2 tails together. I'm just going to tie them 2 together and do a double knot. I'm not going to tie them too tight. There you go. You have an ear. So then I'm going to take my 2 ends that I have here and I'm just going to pull them through the body. Oop. And then I'm just going to cut the end. Okay, so now you can do your other ear. So we're just going to kind of find where we were at. So we went 3 rows. We were on the 4th row from the middle. So just kind of figure out, so about right there. Insert that and then tie the 2 ends together. There we go. Not too tight on the first one. And then do a double knot. And there's your other ear. So now we can put these two ends through the body. And then cut them off. Okay, so now you've got that done. So now we can put on the tail. So we're going to do the exact same thing we did with the ears like we did. We're going to do the exact same thing that we're doing with the tail that we did with the ears. So just insert one of the tails into about like the middle of the back. So I'm going to do it about right here. And then tie these two ends together. And do a double knot so it doesn't come off. And then feed our ends through the body and cut them off. So I almost lose my scissors. There goes my needle. Alrighty, there you go. You have your little piggy.